say you're pretty vocal.
Yeah, I'm very vocal. Very vocal. So, everyone, I think I know half the people in this room, but for those that don't know me, Mike McCoy here. Actually, I was born in Fort Lauderdale, but grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs most of my life. I grew up in Phoenixville area. I went to Springford High School, and my whole entire life, all I really cared about was sports. I didn't give anything about like technology. I didn't know blockchains, cryptos didn't really exist when I was younger, right? I graduated high school in like 2008, and the Bitcoin white paper wasn't even born or made yet, right? But what I think, so I'm going to talk about generally my career, like what brought me to what brought me to crypto, why I got into this whole entire path, and why I think it's interesting and what the futurist kind of space really brings. So starting from the beginning of that, like I said, grew up here in this area. I went to college, actually, LaSalle University, and I was a broadcast journalism major and a film minor. So the skill set I learned from that type of like learning in college was to tell stories and to tell stories fairly well. And I think actually one of the ways that you can be most successful in crypto is by creating story, creating narrative, and motivating people to almost join like a cult following, but to use a different type of way to exchange value with people and to use money in a different way that no one ever imagined before. But in those days, like I had all the right internships in college. I interned for the Philadelphia Eagles, interned for ESPN, for NBC Sports, and then got a job on TV in 2013. So from 2013 to about 2015, I worked for ABC 13 in Houston, Texas. I was like your Jim Gardner. I cover your 6, 10, 11 o'clock news, but for everything sports. And I loved it. Like sports was anything I cared about. I grew up playing American football. I grew up playing basketball, ran track, played rugby. Like all I loved was sports. But I was working every single night and weekend. I was getting paid dog shit money. Like I was making $35K a year in Texas, which is cheaper, but I felt like it was impossible to live on. And one day I always wanted to raise a family and have kids, and I just didn't think being able to do that type of lifestyle, working every single night and weekend and working 80-hour weeks, was going to really do that. So I came back home to the Philadelphia area. I quit the TV job, came back home to Philadelphia in 2015. And a lot of my friends in college were into technology, and one of my friends in college learned about Bitcoin in about 2011, stuff like that. He was very much like deep into hardware tech, and he used all his Bitcoin to buy computer parts. So if at the peak of Bitcoin, he would have been worth about $156 million. But hey, he works at Aqua America, and he works in water for a living. But so a lot of my friends were starting mining in Bitcoin. And so I was like, okay, if you guys teach me how to do it, I'll help like fund it, and I'll host it in my apartment here in Chinatown, actually, where I was living at the time. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons at the time, but the only way I got to like some type of technical prowess and to understanding these type of systems and whatnot was actually from Philly blockchain meetups. So every single week I would go to about 3 to 4 blockchain technology meetups, whether it was about cloud computing, different programming languages, like database management, anything software. And I would actually bring my laptop every single time, like to an event like this. And anytime someone brought up a term, a word, a phrase that I did not understand, I'd write it down. And then later that night for about 2 hours, maybe 3, I would apply it on like Stack Overflow, on Reddit, see how I could research it, see if I could use that type of software or that application or whatever it was. And eventually over time, I gained this knowledge to like understand what these type of things were. So in 2016, I actually was going to more meetups in like Philadelphia and New York, sometimes in DC. And I actually met Joe Lubin, one of the co-founders of Consensus and Ethereum. And he was talking about, so I knew about Bitcoin at the time, but I didn't know much about any other blockchain. I knew a little bit about Ethereum. But the vision he put out about Ethereum being this global programmable blockchain that will be its own internet, you could connect value with anyone in the whole entire world. That like got my gears going. I thought it was so interesting, and I wanted to learn more about it. And he needed more people to kind of tell the story and bring people involved and to get normies and other folks involved in Ethereum and to build products on top of it. So in 2016, I actually joined Consensus, which at the time was an Ethereum venture production studio. I helped launch and find teams like MetaMask and Gitcoin and some others. But it was more of my introduction to Crypto 101. It was really fun in 2017 to 2018. I actually got to, on Consensus' dime, travel the world and talk about Ethereum going to places like, so it was weird. There was a dichotomy of talking to people that were highly technical in cypherpunk and dev. And like Joe was running a couple like crypto meetups at the time where there was a lot of Monero people and Zcash people, and they were very much in that like cypherpunk. And then on the other side, you have the financial and the institutional folks that were from like the World Bank and the DTCC and BlackRock. And I was traveling to like the Monetary Authority of Singapore and speaking with them. And I just learned everything Crypto 101. And you can understand the different levels of financial literacy in different parts of the world. So when you go to countries like Indonesia, or you go to places like Taiwan or Turkey or Venezuela, they thought that crypto was so interesting because their current fiat system was abysmal. They couldn't be able to have a consistent dollar to pay for goods and services. One day the groceries would cost $100, the next day they cost $500 the next week. And if you were a person that lived paycheck to paycheck or was trying to get by, it was very hard to live that type of life. So that's why we understood early on that like a more consistent or less volatile type of currency could be very impactful for different groups like this. And at Consensus, I just learned about differences between trying to interact with devs, for people that were using it for monetary purposes, for people that were investors, as well as people that were end users, everyday people like myself. What was really interesting though at the time is one of the ways I got to learn these things was just taking notes and understanding for people all the time. I still take notes every single day from every interaction I have with any given person, right? But crypto at that time too was very much focused on open source networks and open source contributions. And I didn't realize this at the time, but it seemed like the only way to be able to, across many borders and across many walks of life, to exchange value with people that weren't part of your fiat currency or that weren't domestic to you. Like, it's very hard. I have family in the UK, in Australia, in other places of the world. It was always hard for us to be able to send payments or send gifts or send anything to those people in the world because, one, it took like sometimes weeks for things to get sent over. There was fees that were like 30, 50, sometimes $100, depending on what you're sending to them. So it was like almost impossible to be able to like send anything to your family that's across borders. And this is where blockchains and crypto really stood out to me as a value add, because in an open source network that's controlled by many nodes, computers, and people, you have the ability to make that interchange fee or the take rates from creator or person sending value to a fan or to a person that's actually accepting this. It's way cheaper than any type of mode or operation or monetary system in the entire world. Instead of paying like a large international interchange fee of anywhere between 3 to sometimes 15% or higher, in crypto, and especially on blockchains like SEI, you only pay 0.002 per transaction. In aggregate, if you do that for hundreds of millions of billions of transactions, you save a whole lot of money and value. And those were the type of use cases we focused on early on at Consensus, is how to be able to give direct value between like creator of anything to a person on the internet that wanted to be able to seek that value too. So I went from working in like open source decentralized networks of Ethereum to then working at Accenture. Why did I do this? Probably it might have been a career backstep in a sense, but I thought going to Accenture would help me be able to convince everyday businesses and people to utilize the blockchain that I saw very valuable in these like large enterprise systems. But what I quickly find out, I was there for about 3 years in different projects, but what I quickly found out was that in order for that to happen and get enterprises and large companies to want to use these systems, you have to be able to play nice with others and with your competition, right? And Web 2 companies really don't have the incentive structure or the ability to want to do that. Because for the most part, Web 2 companies, they make money by centralizing data, information, and monetary value, massaging it, putting it into a certain way so that people and users and companies and partners just get it, use it, and it's easily like done for them to the niche markets they're selling to, right? But in crypto, it's more about open source contributions. You trust the open source protocol and the mechanism to do right by the means of success by which a protocol deems is necessary. And pretty much what happened was a lot of consortium models were trying to be done between 2018 to 2021, where like I worked a lot with like healthcare and life science companies. Imagine if Penn, Jefferson, and Drexel Health all wanted to share data information. they had real no incentive to do that. The one incentive is, yes, you could be able to get more pools of people and be able to learn and find different care treatments for care, find abnormalities, and maybe like find better cancer, results to cure cancer, things like that. But the thing is, their business model was all baked into them centralizing data information and then making money of getting that out. And they're making hundreds of millions to almost billions in doing that. Why would they change that model? The only way a model like that can change is if it's so good in the open source model or with end users begging at the door for it to happen in order for it to actually like go into their favor, into a crypto way, right? So while I was learning like the decentralized way of things, I also learned how to win things at the enterprise and the institutional level. A lot of times you have to be able to have an internal champion that is high up in the director to C-level suite. And they have to be your person to say, we need this to happen. The thing with like large enterprises and institutions is there's a reason certain people are in those director to VP to CEO level roles is because they found a technical innovation about 15, 20 years ago that got them to that title. And it's hard, and people do not want to change when they have those Web 2 companies. That was the thing that really like made their mark and helped them get to that success point. And the last thing they want to do is get rid of the thing that like made them famous or made them in charge, right? But now that like the proliferation of software and crypto and things that are changing rapidly, I think more people are open to those type of changes. And I haven't interacted with a lot of these enterprises much since those times. But those are at least the lessons I found is you have to be able to try and work with them and understand why and how they got to those places, as well as how and what their main goals are. So in Web 2 and enterprises, they're already established. They're incumbents, right? Things like crypto, which are more open source, which are more volatile, which are more risky, are the last things they want to touch because for the most part, they have everything to lose. Whereas in crypto, you come to crypto because you're trying to either level the playing field or to like break in or smash a wall or to get into an industry into a different type of way. And those are very much competing motivations to try and want to work together. So I learned valuable lessons in that type of job, even though at Accenture, the thing we couldn't use public blockchains. We had to use all private permission blockchains because Accenture worked with large enterprises and they didn't want to take risks. And that was one of the things. I then also, from Accenture in 2021, I got back into like the crypto-ish space working at BlockDemon, where BlockDemon is an institutional staking provider for like large banks and like wealth funds and hedge funds to be able to connect into crypto protocols to do staking. Staking is generally a thing in crypto. It's like yield. It's earning yield off of like a protocol network's activity. So it was great to get in and understand what institutions want to do. But at the end of the day, institutions just want to make money and make it safe and make it like work, right? So it was more like an AWS job than anything. And then before coming to SEI, I actually worked at Protocol Labs. They are the service provider for Filecoin as well as IPFS, interplanetary file storage. That was a good team, but I was running a team that was working on, it was a team of data scientists and economists that focused on protocol and mechanism design issues. So our main goal was one of two things. We would help a protocol, it was a DeFi protocol in L1 and L2, make number go up, or we did risk management solutions. So if you're in a bear market, you could still make a good amount of rewards and stay relevant, stay alive. So those are the lessons I learned there. A lot of econometrics like stuff that was very interesting to try and learn too. And here at SEI, I help lead everything business development, investments, as well as technical partnerships. And what I describe a lot of my work at SEI, and everyone that's at a layer one especially, layer ones have to be like venture capitalists. You have to think and work like a venture capitalist. Because there's only two things that really matter. It's finding killer apps that bring activity, liquidity, and like usage, as well as finding killer founders as well who could tell a narrative, build a cult, and get people excited in what you actually want to do. If you don't have either of those things within the first 2 to 3, almost 4 years of your protocol launching, you're going to die in irrelevancy like Algorand or other chains like that. People are just not going to bother using your thing, and they're going to move on to the next thing because crypto happens in a flash. Attention spans are even faster in crypto than they are in a Gen Z high school. And you need to be able to capture that attention very, very well. And if your app or your founder isn't able to capture your attention, you're going to die. So in my role, like it's kind of also like a risk and a de-risk for both the founder and myself. The founder of a potential DApp or an app coming in to say is like, is Say going to be around for like 2-3 years? So they want to understand, like, do I have capital or money or ways to like stay successful and be okay in this ecosystem? And then we have the de-risk if, is this team or app or this use case going to last? Do people want to do these things online, digitally? Will this be disintermediated by AI? Will this be disintermediated by because it's being illegal, or it won't be able to be used by US users, or etc.? So, those are the type of games that you generally play. And I would say we're fairly successful, and our philosophy is a little different. So a lot of other like layer ones, they'll raise a large round with venture capital partners, and they'll raise somewhere between 100, sometimes even 350 million on the high end. And we would say we've only raised 35 million, and we did that in 2023 in a market that was a little bit low and down. What we want to do is we want to build open source and in public to be able to make sure that we're building a protocol and product and updates that are relevant for everyday people, and that they want to actually continue to build and iterate over time. Whereas other chains, they'll wait a little bit longer to launch for a token gated experience. That's going to send the price up. They get to someone like a 15, 20 billion market cap, and then it gradually goes down and they kind of go and coast out into the future, right? Both ways to do this make money. It's just about whether you want to have a volatile launch or not. And if you look at most token trends, a lot of times when a TGE event occurs, within the first day to 2 weeks, that's like the highest volume or value of your tokens ever going to be. So sometimes you have to be careful with how those things generally go. But what I have learned through all these experiences, whether it was in sports television, whether it was in crypto, is stories and narrative really matter. Because like we are such social creatures. All everyday people, we just thrive off of tell me a story, tell me something interesting, make me laugh, make me cry, make me feel something. And in crypto, we do that in like such fast and light speed. Meme coins are literally just attention economies. And you can get paid for virality and for influence a lot faster. So the more you can bring attention, the more you can bring noise, the more you can get people noticing and get them excited, the more successful you most likely will be in an attention economy like crypto is. And without having those cult leaders and cult followings, it's going to be almost impossible to generate that type of network effect. But luckily, I know something about stories, and the story I want to tell you is that anyone in this room could build cults online. The internet and crypto on the internet is I've met some of the most interesting people in the world that have taught me lessons about how to think about others, how to think about like global macroeconomics, to also like why and how they think and feel about anything, right? And crypto is global first, and crypto is win and help win. Crypto, you cannot win solo and alone. You have to have others that are part of your community and part of what you're building to actually be successful to win. And I love those type of ethos, and I love that type of theory, and that's what motivates me to continue to want to build interesting things in this space. But that's generally my story. I will tell you stories. I love sports. I love communities. And I love crypto because it gave me a life-changing career that I don't think I'm ever going to leave. It's always interesting. It's never boring. I'm learning things about how and why people want to do anything. And I think generally economics does that too. And crypto is very much an economic vessel and career and industry. And I'm proud to be in it. And that's all I got. I'm here to answer any questions. So thank you. Anybody? Any questions?
You like the Eagles or?
Some days. Right now, I love the Eagles though.
Yeah, so that's someone that's not really familiar with Say. How does it stand out from the other L1?
Yeah. Okay. So Say, protocol-wise, we have the fastest block finale in all of crypto at 390 milliseconds. We have some of the largest TPS at 12.8 thousand transactions per second, and some of the cheapest gas per transaction at 0.0002 per transaction. We're the closest thing to a Web 2 experience on a decentralized network. even a simpler way to describe it is we bring the best of both worlds between Ethereum and Solana. We give you Solana-like performance, but with Ethereum wallets, tools, dApps, liquidity, etc. So we're the first parallel EVM to go live, and generally the difference is like Sui uses the Move programming language. If you were ever be confused, but on Say you also get the best of both worlds between Ethereum and Solana. You get to program applications in both Rust and Solidity. Most of it's in Solidity from developers today, but you have the ability to do both.
What's the backstory? Who founded it?
The co-founders are Jay Jog from Robinhood, as well as Jeff Fang from Goldman and Coatue Venture Capital. The gist was Jay came from Robinhood when they had the Wall Street Bets saga. He was working there and felt, hey, this was a shit type of value exchange system. Why are we holding people's money and stealing it from them? So we wanted to create a faster, cheaper, more fair value exchange through Say. Jeff came from Goldman, just wanted to be able to create a better system for that too. They were originally, believe it or not, going to launch on Terra Luna at first because they thought it had some of the best tech with the Cosm Wasm piece with it. Luckily, they never did because that went down in flames. But it was originally, so in testnet phase, it was Cosm Wasm chain. And that's how you can actually accept Cosm Wasm transactions and addresses today on Say. But we saw quickly in 2024 that most developers and mindshare came from the EVM. And so we just wanted to bring the fastest, best network to connect many people in the world through crypto. And EVM was the way to do it.
Is it a Cosmos interchain?
Technically, it uses the Cosmos SDK and like uses Tendermint for consensus if you'd like to. It's part of your journey. So technically, yes, it's part of Interchain, but it's not exactly that. Yeah.
Mike, so clearly the community building and marketing has changed forever, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the big question is like, how do these changes keep the attention, right? Because attention comes and goes so quickly. How are you guys thinking about sort of the killer app? Because it is really a race to find a killer app. Like, is there a particular area that you guys are thinking about? Is there any that you guys are thinking about that's going to sort of win the race?
So the ability to have a killer app in crypto is you have to have an asset or a token that like can drive up speculative value and allow you to do something that you can't do in Web 2, right? So you have to have a token associated with your use case for the most part. You could be like in Deepin, like with Helium in Solana, which has like a decentralized Wi-Fi network, Hive Mapper, which does decentralized dashboard cams of like Google Maps. So, and you contribute to things like that, but they're more slower use cases. I wouldn't even say they're killer apps. I think they're more like utility apps that people can earn rewards slowly over time and still have a good time like using a blockchain. But I think like example of killer apps or in other ecosystems are friend.tech. Friend.tech on Base was a really big one that, you know, every influencer, major crypto person used it to like pretty much like coordinate like social intros to others, right? Jupiter was a pretty good one on Solana this past year as like a DEX to be able to connect into DeFi liquidity. I also think like Stepin was actually a killer app at one point. Stepin was like your Apple Watch, but decentralized and earning crypto rewards. I think a lot of people got into that, and it was actually why a lot of normies joined into Solana at first. I think you need to have a combination of the asset, the token. You need to be able to get it where people are doing most of the things they do, whether that's like activity, physical activity. Gaming is another one where you're receiving specific rewards by hitting certain levels or owning different assets. And but it's getting harder to do those type of things because agents are mostly doing our digital activities and like representing us in a lot of different ways. So I think the next type of killer app is going to combine agents in a type of way. And I may have said this to someone earlier, but the killer app probably will be something around agents and wallets and connecting into like traditional financial markets, because an AI agent cannot connect to a bank. They can't get an underwritten loan because a bank doesn't trust an agent. They don't know what an agent's going to do. It can do anything and trade on behalf of anybody. And the legal structures of how you make agent trading coins or like groups is really hard. But an AI agent can spin up a crypto wallet and can connect into Coinbase and can connect into those centralized exchanges and DEXs and be able to do things on behalf of people. That's very interesting. So I think a lot of the killer apps and use cases you're going to see in the next couple of months are going to be how agents can spin up wallets for people and trade and interact value within the click of buttons that you just won't be able to do in Web 2, because if you do that similar type of action in a Web 2 framework, someone or some company or something is directly responsible. And I know like there's obviously someone responsible, because whoever creates the algo, right, is technically the one responsible for how the agent does things. But it'll be interesting how those things develop.
You talked about like earning rewards and like how important that is for communities. I just wanted to ask, like, how do you feel about like airdrops? Like,
yeah.
Liquid and like all that, like basically giving away free money to get people off the user.
The thing is, I think airdrops they've always been somewhat important to generate a network effect, right? Because there's only three ways people come to crypto. It's either to make money, to use products and features that you can't do in Web 2 or that are better than they are in Web 2. And three, because of community. You just love and interact with people. You interact with group chats and online and in video chats and all that sort of stuff. I think airdrops have been very good to generate that network effect of like getting free money and bringing you there. But then people just take the reward and they put the fiat and they do something else with it. I like airdrops that mostly like you have to do some type of activity to earn it, and you have to do it consistently and not just do it once. Like you have to either bridge into this ecosystem or network, or make like a type of payment with a stable coin, or do things like that. Do an actual digital action, not just like sign up for an account and then take it, because then you incentivize people to just take your reward and leave. And that's just not valuable at all. So I do like the airdrops that enable you to do something with the asset you're owning. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Like enterprise class, sometimes. How do you collaborate with them?
I don't waste my time. Because the thing is, like, they won't want to take on the risk of the things that we're trying to do and build. So I don't typically work with those type of groups. And your question was to interact with the Accentures and McKinseys of the world. No, we don't really interact with most of them, because they would just take too long to, like, by the time like the deal and the thing we would work with them on would go live, like crypto and like the short-term mindset would be on to the next thing. And the thing is, because those large enterprises have too much administrative and regulatory bloat in them. This is like, this kind of gets controversial a little bit with people with like Doge and Elon trying to take away the administrative bloat within the government too. But I do believe that lean, small, efficient teams make so much more progress. Like at Foundation and Labs, we have 50 people total, and we have over $3 billion market cap. And anybody that works generally at like say Labs or at Foundation does the work of 2 to 3 people as one. And I think too many of those other jobs have too many people that don't bring a lot of value to a lot of things they do. So that's at least my personal thought. We had one question here, and we'll go over there. Sorry, you had a question?
I was going to ask how you feel about like celebrities getting involved, like Trump and like Melania, and like how you feel how that impacts positively or negatively for the ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, that's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor or anything, so this is just my personal opinion. But I would say that there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to that influence. And I think especially you saw like the Haktua token and all that launched. There's too many examples of like risk, because the main thing is like why we have banks and why we have these police like and lawyers and whatnot in this area, so they could do no harm to users. And that's why we have the FTC and other regulatory bodies that help there. But you really can't protect many users in those type of circumstances. And look, I think attention is attention. Like bringing attention to the attention economy is useful and valuable. I just think though they do it for too many of the wrong reasons, and everyone just wants to make money, right? You want to make money off your IP, and that's valuable. But I think it'll probably draw more people away in the short term than have them become long-term users into it. But I'm not going to say that like there's not attention grabbing things that we and say and that other contributors to the Say network want to do too. But everyone can build whatever they want. It's open source software. They have the freedom to do it. It's not my opinion to say it was right or wrong either. We have one or two more questions back there. Yes, sir.
You were mentioning about how agents can help set up different systems on chain, or like just with the Web3 protocols and the interfacing. With like engineering progressing towards agent-centric interactions, agents with agents, and less with human with agents, or even human with human. When you get to the point where a blockchain is supposedly everything is transparent and verifiable, but at the end of the day, it's agents interacting with agents. What's the next step then? If something goes wrong.
So what's the next step? We have just like full agent economies trading on behalf of each other?
Yes.
So every agent.
You can verify everything and everything is traceable, but then at the end of the day, it's still just agents and agents, and the agent made some mistake and something happened.
Well, the agent made a mistake. It just depends on like the intents and how you program the parameters of success for that agent. So,
because you can't program it like an absolute success. It's all probabilistic based.
Well, of course, because a lot of things like AIs hallucinate. They come up with results that aren't actually there. They also, if they're using like privacy preserving like technologies like ZKs, a lot of times the noise in the zero knowledge proof will actually like ruin the completeness of the message or the actual like value of the asset being exchanged and traded. So yeah, of course, there's a lot of factors that go into those things.
My point is, then what's the point of the blockchain when the main motivation of the blockchain is to have that transparency and at the same time security to your transactions, but at the end of the day, your agents are.
So if it does a mistake, a lot of times there's not always full on-chain agents for things. A lot of times it's just a hash of something. Like you could get an agent to trade on behalf of you, but you're going to have to give approval over certain conditions that then go permanently on the blockchain forever. You don't have to have everything fully on-chain.
So the agent is the compromise.
Well, of course, yeah, it's the one that makes a mistake. There's just ways you can prevent it from always being utilized and put on a blockchain, though. Yeah, because the thing is, so the thing is, like agents are best when they're not on chain because on chains are inefficient compared to centralized systems. Right. But what you could do is just be able to hash like the actual value that's being transferred over, just the transfer of it, not the actual activity of the agent. So there's ways to prevent like it screwing it up for you all the time. Right. Yeah, and probably last question because I think how much time we got? Just whatever. All right, cool. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just curious where you guys getting traction. Do you have a sweet spot you'd like to get into?
So DeFi has been our largest use case. We have a lot of native teams. Like our Lend protocol has over 330 million TVL. Our perp dex. What was that?
What's the one?
Yay on Say. And then like our perp dex does very well. We have an AMM that does really well, as well as a Jellyverse that utilizes what they call synthetic stocks or assets. So you can, in crypto, like invest into a Tesla stock, but it's a synthetic asset. So it's not the actual, there's probably a slippage and there's probably, arbitrage you can make between the actual value of like Tesla stock compared to what it is in crypto. But you have the ability to use your crypto to pay into a stock, which is fairly interesting. And we have, all the, like, Say Games is probably the second one because with fastest finality, highest throughput, cheapest gas, you can have like a Web 2 experience in the game and you don't notice the latency as you do in like fully on-chain games elsewhere. As well as payments and stablecoins with USDC. And fourth then is probably the consumer apps that are now coming around. Like we have a privacy SocialFi app. I don't know if anyone heard of Yik Yak before, but it was this Web 2. So one of the founders of Yik Yak is launching a privacy SocialFi app on Say that's launching this week. We have one of my favorite ones. So we have a March Chadness event coming up in March for the basketball tournament. So you can make sports bets on that coming soon. And we have a way for you to be able to pay for streams and pay artists directly in crypto through Unchained Music, which is, I think, a pretty interesting use case because a lot of small to medium-sized artists are going to be really destroyed by AI because they're going to be able to create music and hit a wider distribution and global network because they can hit people while an artist sleeps, AI is going to be able to reach many people across the world. So, I think having that type of use case to combat for everyday artists that want to stay in music is a pretty powerful story.
I miss what the finality is.
What?
What's the finality?
390 milliseconds. 390 milliseconds. So the fastest you can go in any blockchain is, especially an EVM chain, is 150 milliseconds because that's how long it takes for asset to hit compute to then get to the next party. We get as fast as possible as anyone can in that category. And in our roadmap for 25, if you want to hear a whole sales pitch, we have the ability to hit 250,000 transactions per second, and the compute cost of what's called 5 gigagas. That allows you to pretty much hit like NASDAQ and CME group speeds with what we're going to be building this year.
No centralized servers at all? Or?
No centralized servers, but I will say we're not the most decentralized validator group. So we have 42 compared to Solana, yeah. So the reason we have very similar characteristics to Solana. The only difference is that, so when you settle a transaction into a validator set, you're either emphasizing for the hardware space, what's called the disk space, or you emphasize for the memory space, which is in the cloud. So in SEI, we emphasize more in the cloud and the data and the memory space. We do optimistic transaction processing where pretty much if there's a good transaction, it settles, it goes on chain. But if there's potentially a bad one, we find like a wrong value or a potential nefarious address or transaction, etc. It will just continue to try and optimistically process it, but it will continue to fail. If it fails 8 times, it actually gets taken out and off the chain. And so in Solana, a lot of times where the chain has gone down, they've gone down because of disk read errors, because they're very hardware intensive. So in a sense, like, yes, the Solana network enables you to have more of a decentralized hardware network. But if your use case is more, I want the changes last and like go on forever and never go down, SEI is your chain to do that more so. So yeah, we are decentralized. We're just not overly decentralized, and that's what helps us like maintain the speeds of like fast finality and other things.
What are the safeguards other than this 8 times transaction? What are the safeguards poisoning the model?
So yeah, a lot of times, yeah.
Teaching the model bad things.
There's a couple ways you can like ruin a network. There's one to have like a bad transaction or a way that like, so there's in crypto it's called dispersion contracts, which they're like contracts that give out rewards to people when they do certain actions, or like let's just say you staked a certain amount of money for a month and you get your dispersion, your reward every month, like your APY in a sense, right? Someone can attack a dispersion contract and spam it, where you could just fill it with a lot of like low cost transactions, and so that it never gets the latency or like actual dispersion of that contract. There's so many they have to like execute and get ahead of. There's also like MEV, maximum extractable value, where you can like arb a bunch of prices and like none of the real prices ever reflected into the asset on exchanges, both decentralized and centralized. So like you can't prevent any of those type of things, but because we have the fastest finality of 390 milliseconds, there's this term in like blockchains called loss versus rebalancing. When an LP, a liquidity provider, puts money into a pool, like in SEI, they generally will lose something between 10 to 15% of their total value that they put into the network. So if I put $1 million in, I'll generally lose something like 150,000, right, of that $1 million pool. But in SEI, that's because of like bots and ARB and like MEV searchers that try and look for that and try and extract the monetary value of that network. In like Ethereum, they have like 10 seconds for that to settle and fight that out. In In other networks, they usually leave between like 4 to 12 seconds to fight that out. In Say, only your bots are the ones that can really take the MEV and extract that value. So you will only lose somewhere between 3 to 4% as opposed to the 15% within the network. So that helps for like arbitrage and like capital markets generally. And then for prevention of spam, we actually have a couple safeguards in the protocol that if you're sending a certain amount of transactions we have like rate limits generally. But we don't rate limit. It depends on the type of activity. We detect some of these, and we also have security and audit partners that audit us every single month and whatnot. But there's many ways to help protect those things. Every protocol loses money in those things. We lose it less than any other protocol. You're welcome. And I think that's it. So thank y'all.